Welcome to the Natural Visionaries, the podcast where we redefine success in motherhood and in business through faith, purpose, and community. I'm Anna Bordner. I'm a mom, I'm an engineer, I'm an entrepreneur, and a firm believer that God has uniquely called us to create a life that aligns with His vision, not the world's expectations. Here, we have honest conversations with moms who are building businesses, raising families, and living out their purpose as visionaries, making an impact. So if you're ready to embrace a life of faith, freedom, and fulfillment, you're in the right place. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to the Natural Visionaries podcast. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Stephanie is a friend of mine. I'm just like with the South Florida people right now. She's on the East Coast, Stewart area. Love that little town. It's one of my favorites. And Stephanie owns a virtual assisting agency. And this started around the birth of your daughter, who's like 16 months old now. And before that, you were working for a therapist's office. And something happened, you got pregnant, and you had this beautiful baby, and then you decided to change your entire life and your entire career. And that is what we're here to talk about. Of course, I don't have my questions pulled up, but here we go. Tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, what this season looks like in your life.
Well, my name is Stephanie Loesel. I am 35, to think about that sometimes.
You're
35.
so much younger than me.
I have a little nugget. Her name is June, and she's 16 months. And I am currently owner and operator of a virtual assistant agency that works with therapists and psychologists, helping them in their business and giving them some time back so they can grow their business and take care of themselves too. I started in May of last year. I took a virtual assistant course after my daughter was born. I just felt this pull to be at home. I still needed to work and, for our family and financially. And I also, I just have this desire to work and to create something, and ended up, finding this podcast that, really spoke to me. It was about moms and wanting to be at home with your kiddos, exactly what I was looking for. It was called the Live Free podcast, and listened to that through the whole time I was pregnant, and then ended up, once I went back to work after my daughter was born, probably like 5 or 6 weeks after she was born. I just didn't have a lot of time off. There was no maternity leave, set up within the company. So I went back, and she came with me a little bit to the office, and it was just, becoming a lot. And then I said, I'm going to try to maybe take this leap and take this virtual assistant course. So I did the course in January and February of 2024. And then in March, I started to, just tell people about it, what I was maybe thinking about doing on the side. I was really planning on just growing it on the side of my current job, because I was nervous to take a leap and just say, I'm just going to leave and be a freelancer, and, fingers crossed I'd make enough money to do that. And then I met with a therapist friend of mine who said, I could use some virtual assistant help. And so she hired me like on the spot. And then within that same week, I think she told a psychologist friend of hers, ended up getting hired by her. So all of a sudden, really just by word of mouth, these people were coming to me. And I started May 1st, and then by June 1st, I had 5 retainer clients, like monthly retainer clients. And I had to tell my full-time job because it was going to be too much for me to do both. And some of the people that I was maybe potentially working with were not necessarily competition, but they all refer to one another. So it was just best for them to be aware of what was going on. So then they hired me as a contractor in their business when I left as an employee to do their marketing. So that was like July of last year, or 2024.
Wow.
So, yeah, so now I have 10 monthly recurring retainer clients for virtual assistant services, mostly administrative, billing, insurance billing, and also marketing. And a few project clients where I'm doing some things for them that are just, like project based, and then I'll move on to something else for them or end services at that point. So yeah, I got pretty busy. They're all either therapists or psychologists in private practice, or they're the owner of a group practice, all of the people
Wow.
that I work with.
So you saw this need for yourself, and then you used your background of what you already know, plus a little investment in yourself to learn about virtual assisting in general. And you created this incredible business. And I feel like when you do something, you may have been a little like nervous to go all in, but when you do something, you do go all in and you do a really good job. When you go in and you do something, you can just see it in your whole personality. And when you teach your yoga classes, it's just you're present. And I feel like people see that about you. And they say like, oh, hey, I want to work with her because she knows what she's doing, or at least she pretends she knows what she's doing. And you're confident when you approach it. But you don't do all of these 10 clients by yourself, right? You have people that work with you.
So I was, don't tell them, but I was. So some of them are individual therapists that have a private practice that, they only need like 10 hours a month of support, right? So I just pop into their inbox, I do some of their admissions, I post a social media post every once in a while. And there are virtual assistants out in the world that don't take clients that are less than a certain number of hours per month. And I went back and forth between that, but half of my clients, I wouldn't have them then if I, adopted that model. And what I found too is that by giving that, single therapist 10 hours a month, they're able to then take a step back, and instead of working on their business, or instead of working in their business and doing the admin tasks and calling people back, they can have the brain space to work on their business and be creative and say, okay, what's next? How am I going to grow? What am I going to offer? So then they turn into a 20-hour a month client. Then they hire another therapist. So it's almost by me stepping into those smaller hour packages that some other virtual assistants maybe don't approach, I have created, almost like job security for myself in I guess there's a better way to say that, but I'm really passionate about providing the support that they need so that then they can, get back into what they like to do, which is to see clients, to grow their business, because they're entrepreneurial minded, right?
Yeah.
They went out and they started this private practice. So, they want to grow, but sometimes they just get stuck in to return these emails. I'm never going to get to these phone calls. And then they get stressed. They don't do as good of therapy. They're not getting back to people. And now, one of my clients that was in that position, even just a few months ago, now she's hiring a new therapist for her business. So now she's going to be a group practice. She's going to become a CEU provider so that people who are renewing their licensure can get CEUs. So these are things that she had never even thought about or dreamed about, and now being that she's got like that, just that little bit of support, she's able to, to do that. So, so now because I have so many clients, I did have to kind of reach out for some support. So I hired in February 2 contractors. One of them helps me with marketing projects, like some social media for some of my therapists, and one of them helps me with some admin and some admissions phone calls. And then I was growing again. I'm onboarding two new therapist clients this upcoming week. So I needed another person. So I just hired, she starts on Monday, another virtual assistant to come in to help me with some of these clients and in their businesses. So.
How do you find these people that you're working with? Like not your clients, but like the people that you're hiring, the contractors.
So there's a job board, a virtual assistant job board that is part of the course that I took.
Oh, cool.
So the Michaela Quinn, so she's got a course. She has a podcast that kind of brings people into the course. The course is great because in case anyone, thinks that they
Do
want
you
to
have an
do
affiliate
this.
link? We'll include it in the show
I think
notes.
I do, actually. I
Okay.
think I can get it from her.
Okay.
A lot of the things that I learned, I knew how to do already. Invoicing, how to reach out to people and develop relationships, things like that. But the course, as you work your way through the modules, so module 1 is like figure out your ideal client as a virtual assistant. So by the time you're done with the course, your business is ready. Then the next module is figure out your verbiage to talk to your ideal client, figure out your color scheme, build your website. So by the time I finished this 2-month course, I think that's how long it took me, I had an LLC. I had everything pretty much ready. I just needed to kind of take that leap. Which I feel like I kind of got shoved. Like I didn't really choose to take the leap, which I'm glad that I got shoved. I'm glad that I got
But you
so
were
many.
ready, so you just
I
did.
know, I know, but I'm such a feeling person that people are like, write out the pros and cons, do this. I don't go by that. I know myself well enough to be like, this feels right. So then I just leaned into that and started doing something that was uncomfortable for me, which was telling people what I was doing, saying, this is what I'm doing. And, I felt like nervous to be judged about doing something new, like, what's this girl doing now, just because
Well,
of,
now you need to like tell them how your impact is changing people's businesses. Like what you were just saying about how that therapist was able to start the CEO courses and hire another therapist. Like that is huge with their 10-hour a week investment. That change your I feel this way about doing websites too. It gives them a baseline for growth and then you can take it and mold it anywhere else. But yeah, I just love taking something that I'm really good at off someone else's plate and like turning it into something really pretty and functional at the same time.
yeah, exactly. I know.
Um,
I have trouble sitting with I'm doing something that's really awesome. My therapist makes me pause all the time and she's like, can we just pause for a second? Like, what does this feel like in your body to be actually doing this? And I'm like, yeah, it feels great. Like, let's move on. To-do list. And she's like, hold on.
Acknowledge how awesome you are.
Yeah.
So that kind of gives us a segue into the next question. So it feels good now to be doing this. And there was some event, which was, being pregnant, having your daughter, that caused you to really look at this different pathway for a career for yourself. How has your definition of success from when you were working full time to just starting this business to now where you are now, how has your definition of success like grown as your motherhood journey has grown or has how your business has evolved?
I mean, I think it even goes back way beyond motherhood, where I originally, like a lot of us millennials had thought, we're sitting in the guidance counselor's office and they're like, what college do you want to go to? And
Oh yeah.
so you're like, okay, I guess I just got to pick one, right? And so,
Oh, that's exactly what I did.
well, pick a route, pick a route, you're in like 10th grade and they're like, pick a route for your life. So you do that and then you get into student loan debt and then you have to keep working because of all the things adding up. And then, so I think I was working in hospitality and just something started happening. Like I just started feeling, we talked about feeling a shift in that I was like, something is wrong here. Like I don't belong here. The bake shop that I worked at the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach was
Yeah, you were
like
like a big chef, like fancy working 80 hours a week.
so fancy, yeah, very glamorous. Well, so the bake shop that I worked in was literally in the basement of the hotel. It's just the way that it's structured. But just energetically walking into there every day, and not to say anything about, the Breakers. I love attending there.
Not baking in the basement.
Yeah, it just was like, I just felt every step that I took. I was like, something's not right here for me. So I had been doing yoga for a while, so I decided to get certified teaching yoga, found out eventually that teaching 40 hours of yoga a week or making a salary as a yoga teacher is tough, especially back then when this was 2011, 2012, before we had like a lot of people, making a living on social media and Instagram. And I made a shift more into that kind of lifestyle. I left the kitchen and went more into like HR and things like that, and mental health. I started working in mental health, and then went back into the hospitality a little bit so that I could shift my hours a little bit more to something I liked better, and then eventually found my way back into a mental health office. But all of this to say, I felt like I just was kind of going with it a little bit, like this doesn't feel right, so I'm going to do this. And when I was in it, I was like, oh, I'm not where I should be, I'm not where I want to be. But I just always had this like intuition and trust that eventually something was going to end up the right way. So I never wanted to, settle in something. So I stayed places at different jobs, and then, once it felt like the right time to move on, it always takes me a long time to leave a job because I like wait until the very last minute of my 2-week notice, and then I give it, and then they're like, can you stay for another 2 months to train someone? And so that's just me. So I thought that even this role, I thought that was going to happen, that I was going to get stuck. But like I said, I kind of got thrust into this that I just got so many clients so quickly. But, so I feel like even all the way back to before we even thought about having a baby, I was going on this path of like feeling things out and then trusting that this wasn't the place for me, and then moving, to something else.
What gave you the courage to switch for each of those transitions?
I think just really I didn't know that it was just trusting that there was something, either trusting in myself or my intuition or something greater, but I just knew that, I don't know, I guess just trust and just being like, I just knew myself really well. I mean, as I grew, as an adult, I learned a lot more about myself. Like, okay, we tried that, and trying things. And like, that wasn't it. Like, let's try this. And being okay with trying things. I know sometimes people get stuck in jobs and in careers, and they're like, well, I've been doing this for so long, I kind of have to keep doing it. And I just don't agree. I don't think that's the case. My role as a pastry chef, as a gymnastics coach when I was in high school, as a yoga teacher, all of that has built me into what I am doing now and what I'm capable of.
And it gives you a network too that you can tap into.
100%.
Which people don't think about. And
right.
You're from Stewart, so where you live is where you're from. So you also have like a good network of people there. When you were talking about the different jobs, my sister, I feel like this was a quote she had on like MySpace. Yes, we're that old. And it was like, I'm great at jobs. I've had a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but honestly, having a lot of jobs really builds character. Mm-hmm. And it teaches you grace through the transitions and courage through the transitions, and really teaches you how to show up for the next thing, and knowing that there is a learning curve at every new thing that you do.
Well, and I don't even think it was like a lot of jobs in number. I think that they were just so different. Like when I sit down to look at my resume to like apply for something, I'm like, okay, how do we make, pastry chef, HR representative, customer service, how do we make this all fit into the new job that I'm applying for? And I always, would change words and things that I was responsible for at that, place to make it fit for what the need was. But now on where I'm at right now, I can kind of see and laugh about how all of those things that I've done, they're not all separate. They're all they've all made me into being capable of what I'm doing today.
100%. And how cool of like a backstory is that, if you were to talk more about it, like pastry chef to assistant or
Story for
virtual
another
assistant
day.
agency. Okay, shifting gears again. What has been one of the most challenging seasons of motherhood for you, and what helped you through it?
I feel like I'm, with a 16-month-old, I'm still fairly new into motherhood. But so as of right now, I mean, being pregnant was really tough for me. Like first trimester, even the third trimester, because I was like 2 weeks past due. So I was like, okay, let's get this going. It was challenging for me to go back to work and leave her here, with my husband and be pumping in the car and, just it was, yeah, that maybe was the most challenging time because he would be like, she's holding her head up and I'm, just sitting in an office with no windows and, just
Fluorescent
living
lights
another
and
day. Yeah. And I did like my job and I liked working in mental health, but I just knew again, like I just felt I felt this pull literally towards the door of my office to, to do something else, like to keep looking and just to keep being curious. And so so I would say probably when she was like 6 to 8 or 6 weeks and on, just going back to work and not being present. And now I have different challenges with a 16-month-old because she's
yeah.
getting on furniture and she is like, what are you doing over here, as I'm like on a Zoom call. But those are fun because the worst case scenario, I get to play with her, right?
I know.
That's
Worst case. And then I
worst
get to
case
stay
scenario.
up late and finish the work I didn't do.
Yeah, there's that.
And let's talk about that actually real quick because we were chatting before and there's like these different seasons of and I don't want like the boss mom hustle vibe on this podcast, but there's also seasons of it. As you're starting a business, as you're like me when I'm doing websites, if I'm trying to knock something out or I have a new offer I want to launch, like it's consuming my brain and I got to get it out of my brain and like into reality. And so there's seasons of just doing more or sleeping less. And it sounds like right now you're kind of in that season. um, maybe talk a little bit about that.
I am. I think when I first started virtual assisting last year, it was a nice balance. I had a few clients. I would do the work. When she was ready to play or something, I would stop and, you know, um, and that was great. And now that I've chosen to kind of take the path of growing and taking on more clients and really, I guess financially, but also I just have this desire to work with and help more people because I'm like, yes, okay, then I can help that therapist and that therapist. So now that I have more clients and people working with me that I'm kind of responsible for, I do find myself working really late and waking up really early. Like I usually will go to sleep around 10:30, 11, but there are nights when it's midnight, 12:30, and then I usually wake up at 5 right now just to get enough work in before she wakes up. I'm working on some weekends during her nap time, and the trade-off is that I get to be here with her. I don't have to drop her off to somebody that I don't know, and I know a lot. I have some friends and people that I know that do have to bring their kids to daycare or want to, and then
It was like
they
your
go to
main
work.
motivation to do this whole thing is you didn't want, like, you just wanted to be with her. And that's such
Yeah,
a pure motivation to
right.
create all of this.
Right. And then sometimes I pause so I can do some things, or where we go on a walk and I do voice to text to email someone. And, right now we're just kind of doing as much as we can, flying by the seat of our pants. But that's what I want, that's what I wanted. And I wanted to be able to pause my email to look down at the little book that she brought me and to cook her meals at home every day and feed her while I'm working on things. So I'm aiming and striving for a better balance to where I can, like take a whole day to go do all things with her and then, work a certain hour schedule during the week. So that's where I'm headed. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. What boundaries have you created? Or at this point, it's all, it's one of my questions is like, have you created boundaries in motherhood between like your business and motherhood? But it's hard with that age because Corbin's almost 3, but my first two are 14 months apart. So I had a 2-month old and a 14 month, or and a 16-month old at this point. and there were no boundaries. I remember doing a Facebook Live teaching an oils class, and Declan is in the background taking they called it a pup pad from Paw Patrol. It was like his Kindle. He's literally dipping it in a bucket of water. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my life right now. There were really zero boundaries. But I did learn things like not having my email alerts on my phone, not having Instagram alerts, things like that. Is there anything that you do that's like simple things that give you some semblance of boundaries between motherhood and business? You're
Right
laughing.
now, right now, probably not. Only because, like we talked about, and I did have these boundaries set up. Like, I'm going to stop at this time. I'm only going to work, when she's napping or when we're not playing. But at this point in our family schedule, hard. I feel like one of my friends that does my hair, actually, she's like, sometimes in the beginning you got to be a yes girl. So I feel like that's where I'm at right now. Like, if somebody needs something, I'm jumping to do that. But again, with the most important part of just being here and being present with her. Yeah, so I would like to be better at setting some boundaries, but I don't work with clients who are not okay with me having a baby around.
Yeah.
I have, if she's awake and I have a Zoom call at the same time, she's there, she says hi to them, she goes back and independently plays. So that's something for me that's important. Obviously nobody wants to hear a baby screaming or crying in the background when you're on the phone with a new patient or an intake or something, but at the same time I do those calls when she is asleep. But I don't work with clients. I tell all of them that I'm a mother and that I work from home and that my baby's around, because if they aren't okay with that, then they're just not the right client for me.
That's a huge boundary. I think that's so important. And we kind of like try to shy away from those conversations sometimes because, I mean, I've lived through the getting pregnant and less promotion opportunities, things like that. So it's almost like something that we are ashamed of, which we're not actually ashamed of it. It's just career has sometimes forced that into our brain. But you just confront it. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I recently saw someone that I follow. She's a yoga teacher, and when I first had June, and I was thinking about what can I do and how can I incorporate her into my work life, I was like, oh, maybe I could take her to some of my yoga classes, which I did. I did bring her to some of my private lessons where they were okay with her like making a little bit of noise. But I stopped teaching all of my group classes, classes at the beach, because I just thought that it would be too much. And then I just saw this. She's like a yoga influencer on Instagram, and she teaches all of her classes with her baby strapped to her chest and that, and swaddled. And then someone will take her if she's fussing, like one of her students will take her just because they want to. And so I am like, yeah, like that is okay. Why do we have to hide the babies? Everybody knows that they're here. Why are we hiding them away from everyone? So that's kind of what I'm trying to make people be okay with.
Yeah, I love that. Have you created any rhythms? You said like you feed her all her meals at home, or habits that keep you grounded, keep you focused, even when like your days are chaotic and screaming babies in the background of Zoom calls or whatever it may be. Have any good like what do you do?
I mean, I try to exercise as much as possible.
Yeah, don't like undersell yourself there. You are like a
Well,
fit
no, but
CrossFit yoga
I,
mom.
I
So,
had to cut out going to CrossFit because it's really 2 hours. I don't
yeah,
have 2 hours extra.
100%. Yeah.
It's 20 or 30 minutes there, an hour workout plus all the chit chatting, and then 30 minutes home. And I don't have that time right now. So we've kind of built like a garage gym with some dumbbells and things like that. So even like a 20-minute workout is helpful. I have a few private yoga students still that I'll go to their homes and teach them a class, usually like twice a week or so. So that's really nice because it's kind of a class for me too. So I just get to take a few nice deep breaths without somebody like, without being responsible for a little human.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's nice. And then my mom and then my mother-in-law help with her sometimes too. So if I, like, that's where she's at right now. She's at my mother-in-law's house. If I say, hey, I have a call at 10 o'clock, could you take the baby for a little bit? So it's just helpful to have some time to down regulate, because your nervous system is so amped up to just, what is she doing? What is she on top of? Okay, what's next in the day? So even just that, as simple as someone watching her for a few minutes, whether they're here with her or somewhere else. So yeah, I would say those are some things that I do.
Yeah, like you want to be home with her, and I think that's so important. Like you want to be home with her, and like that's your goal. But also, sometimes you need a minute. So
When we
that's not to
were
say we're
meant to be in
superhuman.
a village, right? That
Yeah.
somebody was gonna watch your baby for a little bit for you. Like the whole mom alone only with the baby was not ever a part of our evolution. So I think that having people around you, like a little village or community, whether it's your neighbor or another mom that you switch with and each other watches the kids or family, I think that that's really helpful and healthy.
Agree. So, what encouragement would you offer to another mom who's in a different stage, whether she's just starting a business or maybe she's feeling burnt out? Like, what advice would you give to someone who wants to maybe start their own virtual assisting business or agency?
First, I mean, I would just say to maybe just take a look inward and figure yourself out and figure out, what fires you up, what makes you be like, oh, I can't wait to wake up and work on this today. For me, there are some tasks that I'm like, I have to call this insurance company today, that aren't as enticing, but the whole goal of, okay, let's help this person, let's get their business going, let's get them fully booked so that I can work on something else for them. Like, there's never any question in my day of like, oh, do I even want to do this today, ever? So I think understanding what drives you, how you do things and process things. Like, I know that I feel things out, so I don't waste time making a pro and con list. I don't waste time comparing things. Like with my new hire, I just chose her because I had a great conversation with her, semantics aside. So I would just say to really understand yourself and to follow your intuition. If you know that something's not a good fit, no matter the logistics of it, like this just makes sense because it's this amount of money, it just isn't going to be the right fit. I think that you just have to know what's best for you and then try to get to that however you can.
Taking action. You're a big action taker. You kind of just do it.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that is a huge, not the word, the benefit is not the word, a huge part of being an entrepreneur is just taking action, whether or not, and sometimes it's the wrong action, and then you backtrack and try again.
Yeah.
But
Those were some of my best actions that now I know the ones that were wrong.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree that taking action and yeah, just doing something about it. I talk to people often that are like, I don't think I could, I don't think that, I don't think this. I'm like, that's the problem. You're thinking a little bit too much about it. Just try, do something on the side. I have a friend who, she's a physical therapy assistant, very steady in her career, but she's got 2 kiddos at home now and she really wants to be at home with them. It's funny because I always looked at her career path and I was like, I'm really interested in the body and science. And I thought, oh, maybe that's a good career path for me. And I always looked at her and thought, wow, maybe I should do that. And so now her and she's done some projects for me. She's going through the same virtual assistant course because she's like, I need to do something. So she's going down to part-time. She's doing virtual assisting. I would love for her to come on board with me eventually when she's ready. But there's always a way to make something happen, even if you just start, little by little, like I did. I thought I was starting little by little, and then it ended up, now I have 3 people working for me. So yeah, I would just say, yeah, taking action.
That's really cool. So what is a dream or vision on your heart lately, and how are you stepping into it? And maybe that's the building out the agency. I mean, you tell me.
Yeah, my goal now, as of today, my goals are to build out an agency, help as many people as I can in their businesses. I would eventually like to step out of the role of actual administrative services, like on a daily basis, so that I can manage all of the projects and say, put in place a virtual assistant for each therapist that I work with, so that I can say, okay, what are we working on for you in Q1, Q2 to get to your end goal, your annual goal, or your 5-year plan. So to kind of become more of like a project manager role, and then eventually to put in project manager, so then I can oversee the business. I also have a lot of people that reach out to me about virtual assisting and about how to get involved with mental health providers. And, not that I know everything under the sun, and I don't really want to put out a whole course like the one that I took from A to Z, but I would love to put out something, whether it's a digital product or a really short course or even like a mastermind group, just guiding people, with like a glossary of terms that you definitely have to know, things to keep in mind.
Tools you use.
Tools that I use, exactly, kind of like my method of how I've found to be successful and help the therapist be successful, because I find myself in my Instagram messages or on email repeating myself a lot as far as when people are like, hey, I have a question. So I just love to put together something that people can access that are either already virtual assistants, or maybe they're working in mental health and they want to try to virtual assist from home, so they have some knowledge. So that's something too that's kind of been on my mind a little bit.
Again, you're seeing this common question or this common problem, and you're like, how can I solve this? And I feel like there's so many problems in our head throughout the day, but the one that keeps coming back to you, like this podcast is one of them that's been on my brain for so long, but the one that keeps coming back to you and it doesn't go away, maybe think about what it looks like to take action on that one thing, and that'll lead to the next things. So yes, I love it. You are just full of insight and knowledge, and I love how you've just invested in yourself, realized that you had this pull to do this business, and went for it, created it, made it a thing. And I do want to say we are recording this in mid-ish April, and it won't be released till next month at some point, but you are in the middle of rebranding. So we will include all your links in the show notes and release this when that happens. So make sure to check that out. Give her a follow. See what she's up to. Any last words of advice or wisdom or anything you want to add?
I think so. I think just going back to what we talked about before, trusting yourself, understanding yourself and what you need and what you're capable of, and then trusting that you can actually meet that. And I would also say too, letting go of judgment of yourself. I'm my harshest critic. I think a lot of us are. And most of the time, people don't even really care what you're doing, or so I've found such a powerful tool is just to talk about what I'm doing, and not in a salesy way. In fact, I don't even really post that much on Instagram about my business because I'm so busy in it. I'm working on getting better about that, but just having conversations with people and not being afraid to tell them what you're doing, what you're up to, and letting go of fear of judgment of that, because that I've never advertised before. I've never marketed myself aside from just people telling other people and my clients booking me with other clients. So I think that was really valuable, is that I went against what I would normally do and keep everything really internal until it all pans out. But it didn't pan out until I talked about it.
That's so true. Every single website client I've gotten has been people I know. So I can post all day long, but a lot of it's just reaching people I know, and they're like, oh yeah, someone needed a website, I can recommend her. Your posting isn't going unnoticed. Like the one person that I thought of you when she asked me if I had knew anyone who did virtual assisting for a therapist office. I'm like, actually, I do, and you were too busy to take it on. That like word of mouth and that connection is just, and you're so powerful with that, with connecting with people and being personable. And people liking you. You just draw people to you. Where I'm like, okay, let me just like rub off on me a little bit so I can learn what you're doing. You try. Okay, well, thank you for being on here. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see all that you do with all this rebrand.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for being on. Thanks for listening in today, guys. That was Stephanie Loesel, owner of her own virtual assisting agency. Make sure you check her out. Go follow her on Instagram. Go check out her website. If you need help with virtual assisting, if you're a therapist, she's your girl. She's got the credentials to do it and do it right. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with a friend. And I will see you next week. Thank you for joining the Natural Visionaries podcast.